Hi everybody, welcome to Lesson 2, Why is it a Poem? Today we are going to go over the common characteristics of poetry. This lesson should help you identify a poem. So the first thing we're going to talk about, rhymes. It is important to remember that poems don't always have to rhyme. There is a difference between rhythm and rhyme. Poems usually have a rhythmic sound, but they don't have to rhyme. Next, we are going to talk about the translation difficulties when it comes to poetry. Poetry can sometimes be hard to translate. It typically takes a few read-throughs in order to truly grasp the concept of a poem. But it's important to remember that this is completely normal, and even the best poets have to reread poems multiple times. That's what makes poetry so diverse with meanings. Everyone will read a poem slightly different, which we will discuss in the next lesson. So if you're struggling to understand a poem, talk to me for help, but just know that it is normal, and everybody struggles with poems from time to time. Now we are going to talk about the form of poetry. This is an important characteristic when it comes to determining if something is a poem or another work of literature. Poems typically have a different form than any other piece of literature, making it easy to decipher from essays, short stories, novels, etc. Poems will vary in how they look, but they are broken up into stanzas, composed of lines, and are typically in block formats. Poems can also change shapes to depict an emotion or story the author is trying to put across to the reader. Here are some examples of form when it comes to poetry. As you can see, they're all different, but they're all pretty easy to identify as poems. Take a few seconds to look at these. So as you saw from the examples, the form does vary, but it is substantially different than other works of literature. Now we are going to discuss the emotional side of poetry. Like songs, poems will typically impact some sort of emotion, whether it's anger, joy, sadness, love. Poems are also known to provide the reader with a new understanding of life, revelations, or insights. That's why when you read a poem or you hear a really good song, you will oftentimes come away from it feeling extremely inspired. And continuing on, we are going to discuss the language used in poems. Most authors are picky about their word choice, but poets are especially picky. When reading a poem, it can be noticed that each word is precisely placed in to allow the poem to flow properly. This is very important when writing poems like haikus or sonnets, where there is a specific number of lines and syllables a poet is required to meet. It is important to remember that poems can be identified in many different ways, including ways that were not listed in this presentation. Poetry is a form of creative writing, so it is possible that some poems will break away from the typical poetry expectations. If you think something is a poem, trust your gut. You're probably right. For your homework assignment, please answer the question following this video.